Yeah.
And I find that really profound, Luis, because I was just thinking that, one of the key things I've argued with people in regards to like film or TV or even music is, does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? And really, like, you're talking about the like physical art, like paintings and shit. We go back to the when man first walked the earth, and we're talking about cave paintings. It's all about an expression, and a song can really move somebody deep. It can be a very artistic song that it expresses about the pain that you feel about a loved one, or it can be a movie that really touches on some very difficult subject matter, like we're talking like Schindler's List or something like that.
Yeah,
very difficult things, and that's a lot of art imitating life, and you can't really do that with video games in a way, just because one, we're not plumbers who jump on turtles. But I think, as Luis, as you say, it's the only art form in which you're not just a person who is experiencing it, you are part of the experience.
In a way, you can be the painter to the painting.
You can be yes, you are the painter to the canvas, and you are. It's such a unique thought. It's such a very strange trying to grasp it. how a different art form it is.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because it's not just about the content in the game; it's about how you, the individual experiencing that art, has to interact with it.
Well, and think about if anybody's ever been to like modern art museums and things of that nature, a lot of them, their goal, they're moving beyond the boundaries of the canvas, and they're looking into how can we engage the audience or the viewer into the art form itself. So like, we live in Fort Worth, so there's the Modern Art Museum here.
Yeah.
And when you go in there are exhibits that are literally you enter into a room, and there's these pieces of string that hang off of the ceiling and connect the ceiling to the floor. But when you walk in there, you look at these pieces of string as if they're like glass panes.
Yeah.
So you see how people, like when you're in that space, people walk up and they think that it's a glass pane, so they walk around it. But in reality, it's meant to walk through it. So it's the art form is not necessarily the craftsmanship of this thing, but it's the experience that people have in that moment. And video games are all about that.
It's like, and it's all about stepping through the canvas.
Yeah.
And putting yourself there. And people can argue all day long about, these games hold no value, or it's just artistic. Art has always, in my opinion, art has always been an expression of us. It's of art comes from us. After all, we are the ones who create it, whether it's visual art, music, film, whatever. We are the ones who create it. So it's a reflection of us. So it only makes sense that this medium, which was once considered nothing more than just a toy or just, silly video games, it's much more than that now. We are expressing so much more with video games now. We are exploring, as you said, we're exploring like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. We're exploring Psychosis with games that are helping socially with kids who may not be able to interact with other kids physically. They can instead step through that canvas and engage in a world online with other people and feel included and feel like they're a part of a world and something more.
Right. Yeah. We've talked about Far Cry 5 last week and stuff, and it's dealing with religious cult, and that's a serious subject that 5 years ago wouldn't be something that people would touch on, but now we're at the point where it's something that we can kind of explore and get exposed to. And I look at BioShock as a great example for things like a game that to me is an art form in itself, and that the world that they created was beautiful. Just their canvas is rapture, and the areas that they created and the experiences you get and the setting and how it captured this like 1960s feel of but underwater, like this whole entire space, and then the characters that they built and how rich they were, and their design and their portrayal throughout the game, and the themes that they touched on. Because like if you look at poetry is an art form, and it's intense, but there's some moments in BioShock that are like poetry. Just like even just the words, like what was there's the banner they had, I can't remember the
no
name.
gods nor kings, just man.
Yeah, those kinds of things, like those words that they express in there, and then like even with the Comstock and BioShock Infinite, like some of the things that he said, were like, damn, that's intense.
Well, that's why I find that that line from the BioShock villain in the first one,
Andrew Ryan.
And Andrew Ryan's saying, is a man not entitled to the sweat on his brow?
Yeah.
And that, again, that reflection, society versus the art form. And, I think that we are entitled in this respect. We are entitled to say with the medium being what it is, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And it's growing. It's ever growing. We're not stopping. Like it's not like it's going to go away anytime soon. If anything, it's just going to become more interactive, and it's going to become more inclusive. So, it's here to stay. It's here to stay.
It is here to stay. Yeah. So another question I want to touch on is, obviously I think we kind of can all agree it's not quite there for like mainstream acceptance, but it's definitely getting that direction where people are starting to realize it and see it. But like, what are some things that can be done to expedite that process, to push it forward to where people better understand it? I mean, like, I think definitely these games like your article with Celeste and Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, building those experiences can get out there to people beyond just gamers to see these things. But like, how can the mainstream audience look in from the outside, and like, what could be the catalyst that would make them reconsider how games are perceived?
I think that one's really tough, only because every other medium is easily consumed because it involves almost no, and that sounds weird to say, but like it involves no effort to do, right?
Right. You actually have to
everyone
do something
can
with
look
games.
at a picture. Everyone can read a poem. I mean, so long as they know how to read. I mean, hearing music, watching movies, like all of these things are so static and require, just the user to just do them. And as far as the topics that are concerned with them, well, they just have to be the right ones, right? I can selectively choose what art I want to look at, all of those kinds of things. And although those elements exist in video games, not everyone, has the want to grab a controller and play a video game or grab a mouse and keyboard and play a video game. And that's probably the biggest barrier and the biggest reason why, it may not ever be the case where they are widely accepted through use, through people actually going out and using them or doing them. And there will never be a future that has every person playing video games. I mean, there's some people who don't read books or don't watch movies, but people listen to music, they do all of those things.
Right.
I'd say probably if any strides were to be made to make them more widely understood as that, I mean, Pokemon Go was probably the best example I can think of because literally everyone played that thing, and not just gamers, but just random people too. The issue with something like that, though, is it misses like the core tenets of what makes games art nowadays, right?
Right.
Not just gameplay. Like gameplay, I mean, you can really, if you fudge things a little bit, you can really consider everything as art, and because it's different, it's new. I mean, math is technically art. If you think about the fact that people can create new things out of it, and put two pieces together, and it can speak volumes. It can say a bunch of things. But at the same time, for video games, again, that's the issue is that people aren't seeing the parts of video games that make them so impactful.
Yeah.
Like I'll remember gameplay because it was fun, but the things that really make me remember something in a video game are great music, great scenery, art direction, those are the pieces that people don't get to see, and it's tough to put that in front of them because a lot of video games is physical and it requires you to actually sit down and do, which, animation was probably that first step. Animation is kind of like by extension of video games because there's, animation in both.
Yeah.
Somewhat. And even then, some people don't watch animated movies. Like, that's just it. And
Yeah.
That's probably a weird kind of digression to take, but that's sort of my biggest correlation to how video games maybe kind of cut in. And animation's been around forever, man. Like, fucking Snow White came out in the 30s, I think. It was 20s, 30s, one of those.
Sometime back then.
Yeah, so that's sort of what I think is keeping everything from clicking with everyone.
Yeah, I do agree on the active aspect of video games, and that you can passively watch a TV show or a movie or listen to music. You can sit there and like cook food while you're doing this thing. But when it comes to video games, like I can't sit there and make dinner and play a game at the same time.
I actually wrote about this. I don't know if you recall it, about insert coin to appreciate art.
Yes.
You had to go to Intergamer/read.
Right. That's right.
But yeah, video games are the only art form or media that you have to engage physically with.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the hurdle if this is gonna be accepted wildly by the mainstream. I don't know if it's accessibility, because even if you're looking from a accessibility standpoint, I mean, hell, the Wii put more families together playing games, I think, than any console had up to that point. Like, everybody wanted a Wii and everybody wanted to play it. And yes, Pokemon Go is another great example of it, because that was a phenomenon that I am blown away by.
I still have people that play. Like, I just had somebody text me yesterday saying they caught a Dragonair. I'm like, people are still playing this game. Blows my mind.
But with as accessible as it is, you're starting to talk about the weighing the weighing of each thing. Like, is it more, to make it more accessible, you probably have to dumb it down and water it down as far as ease of play, and it's probably not going to be very in depth.
Yeah.
With its plot or story, if it's so easy to play.
Right.
But to make it more difficult, the less people are going to play it. So maybe finding a sweet spot might be the answer. I don't know.
I think we'll see where things go with like Twitch streaming and stuff like that. But I think Twitch streaming is a good way, or streaming in general is a good way to expose people who may not, because I listen to a lot of these different podcasts in which you have the gamer in the family, and then you have their wife or their husband or whatever that doesn't touch games. And by them sitting there and watching these experiences, specifically like walking simulators and things like that, they will sit down and enjoy those types of experiences, because it is almost like watching a movie, and they can help them kind of guide through that process. They don't have to actively play it, so they can also do something else if they want to, but then they're getting exposed to that. So with streaming and all that, it's exposing people to these games that they may not want to play, but they can sit there and actually watch it and make food or do whatever, and at least consume that media. I mean, some of these you should really be putting a lot of attention into, because they're so deep. Like, again, Edith Finch is like incredibly deep, and even Shadow of the Colossus, there was so many little nuggets in there that you really need to be paying attention to. And that's something that I think that'll help over time.
It's going to help for sure. Well, and we've mentioned about how developers are all the time leaving these big companies to go pursue their own projects.
Oh, freaking Death Stranding, like that's an art piece right there through and through. It's so messed up.
It's so funny you mentioned that, because, and I will say, it's a little sidetrack story, but still relevant, is that anytime that I have friends over who have never played games before ever, and we're chilling out at the house and just enjoying it, and I see that we're flipping through my Apple TV, I'll stop on my trailers and I'll just kind of keep something on in the background just so while we're talking, and then I see Death Stranding come up as something that I've looked up frequently, and wait, what movie is that? It's not.
Let me show you.
Allow me to show you. And then I play those trailers from Death Stranding, and like people who have seen it are like, "Can I just watch you play that when you get it?" And I'm like, "Of course you can."
Watch the master at work.
By all means,
Watch the artist.
come watch Norman
Paint his canvas.
Come watch Norman Reedus and the Funky Fetus.
Naked. You know, in case you, no. Anyway, but yeah, no, I definitely think that, you know, video games, clearly I think there's no question about it, at least in our realm, that they are an art form. And I think we are going in the right direction. We're moving a lot faster than we used to. Cause I mean, when I was
We have to get the
going through high
bullshit
school and
politics
stuff,
out of it also is going to be another thing.
But there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. And I think that as the technology has finally reached the point where we can really do whatever we want. Right. I think technology was a limitation for us for a long time. I mean, it can be a helpful thing, but it's also a hindrance in that you can't, you know, you want to make this thing, but you can't because you can't visualize it or whatever. And now it's so easy for people to, you know, with Unity, people can just spin up a game in no time and build their imagination on a canvas like really, really quickly, which is awesome. So I'm excited to see what the future holds with games, and I think it's definitely going in the right direction, in a positive direction. And the next couple of years are just going to be incredible because we haven't seen the full potential of our console systems yet. In this generation, we have other generations of console systems that are still being developed. So VR is, you know, still growing and working to expand that medium to
it's
other
always
places.
Changing, yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff there, and it's an exciting time to be a gamer. So yes, again, thank you, David, for the submission.
Good
we hope
question,
that
David. Good job.
Covered a lot. That's something that I feel like you could write a novel about and still not be done with the topic. But
I tried to do it in 500 words and failed.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was really good. I liked it.
Thank you.
Head on over to theinnergamer.net for our full podcast episode for our weekly game impressions and top headlines of the week.
That's one of me doing an interview. Here's one of all of us. We'll make some cool stuff in there.
Things.
Brett's also right here.
Like this video, subscribe, keep up with all the latest video game news and opinions that you care about right here on The Inner Gamer.